tonight, in our interview with the Salary and Remuneration, that is Commissioner, today our reporter Edward Nyamu took time to unmask preparation of Salary and Remuneration Commission ahead of the upcoming 3rd National Wage Bill Conference that is expected to give out the way forward on how to get 30% of the National Wage Bill. Edward Nyamu had a sit-down with one of the commissioners, and this is how things unfold. Listen in.
Ahead of the 3rd National Wage Bill Conference happening from the 15th to the 17th of this month, championed by the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, KUTV has taken an initiative to bring you close to the issues that will be discussed in the conference. And for that, we have held a one-on-one talk show with Commissioner Nelly Ashubwe to enlighten us more. Take a look.
Thank you for...
Karibu, Bwana Edward Nyamu. Welcome to my office.
It's good to be here. What's the background of this conference?
The background is very simple. The world has changed. We no longer operate the way we used to operate several years back. But the background of this National Wage Bill Conference is the fact that the law, the Public Finance Management Act, stipulates that the money spent on the pay of public officers should not be more than 35% of the money the government has. That's the money they call revenue. Should not be more than that. What are we doing about the pay we pay public servants? Why is it beyond the 35% as the Public Management Finance Act has said? What is the issue? So that's the background, actually, to look at the issues around the reason why employers in government are spending more than 35% on remuneration and benefits of the public servant. Yeah.
Going ahead to the 3rd, do you think these resolutions have been met?
The resolutions that came out of the 2nd National Wage Bill Conference were resolutions falling under different institutions in the public service. So every institution has either implemented what was on their table or is in the process of completing that implementation. That is where we are. So we cannot say that we wait until we completely implement, because some of them were short-term, others were long-term. So you'll find the short-term ones have already been implemented, but the long-term ones are still going on. They will still be implemented, okay? This one is specifically on a very key issue towards the 35%. How is this nation going to move towards the 35% as the law states? What is it we're not doing right? Or what can we do? What can we do going ahead so that we work within the provisions of the law?
What is the theme of the conference?
The theme is very apt, and it is towards the 35%. Where are we today? Today, I think we are around between 43 and 60%, somewhere around there. If you take an average, you are around there. So what is the issue? Are there institutions in this government that are working or paying their salaries to its employees in government within the 35%? How about those who are paying beyond? What is the issue? And that's why we're holding this conference, to be able to put our minds together to unravel the mystery around the 35%. So that we say, if this is what we are doing to be able to work, not to meet that threshold, to work beyond the threshold, we need to come back and say, can we do things in a different way? If there are problems around the 35%, are they problems that are supposed to be resolved by another legal provision, or we review the 35%? Or if the 35% is put there, why was it put there? And why are we not working with it? That is why at the end of the 3rd day, we must be able to come up with resolutions to be able to resolve that issue. Yeah.
What are the justification for this conference?
The justification of the conference, very simple one. It was directed by the summit that SRC, together with other government institutions, hold a conference to discuss the issue of a wage bill being within the threshold of the 35%. And the reason why there are other stakeholders is because, you see, SRC, if you look at the mandate of SRC, it is to set, review, and advise on remuneration and benefits of the public servant. Once it was advised, the employer is supposed to make sure that it implements what SRC has given. And it should be within the 35%. So you realize that once we do the bit that falls within our mandate, there is another government institution that is supposed to pick up from there, the employer. The employer has to make sure that what I'm paying as per the advice of SRC is one, followed to the latter. Okay? If it's not followed to the latter, SRC normally does something called monitoring and evaluation to establish what are the problems the implementer is facing with the advice that we have given. When we pick those issues, they also help us to improve in the manner in which we advise on the issues of remuneration and benefits. Many a times, the public may not understand. Public may not understand that the Commission has a specific mandate to operate within. It may think that the Commission also literally gives employees money as pay. We don't do that. As we advise, we give a figure. We say, you as your journalist at your grade, your job grade, this is your pay, and these are the attendant allowances. Once we do that, the employer will proceed to implement. If they face hiccups or issues, they'll always come back and tell us, you gave us this advice, but these are the problems we are facing. Together, we come up with a better solution. Yeah.
And we are talking about reaching a threshold of 35%.
Yes.
And what I understand currently, we are at 47%,
yes,
if I'm not wrong. So how did we get to 47?
That's a very good question, and there are many reasons to that. Before we advise, we do a lot of research to understand several things on how we need to advise, where we are economically, how much money government has, and so forth and so on. One of the things we've come across is that we found institutions having more than the number of employees it's supposed to have. Several reasons surrounding to that. Remember, in this, for example, in this current government, it is very serious about creating employment for its citizens. But I'm not saying it's the reason why the numbers are beyond. It came and found those numbers there, okay? So that may be one of the reasons why we are spending more than we are supposed to spend. SRC has been around for close to 12, 13 years now. Before SRC came on board, remuneration and benefits or salary in the public service would be determined by every institution would determine pay for its employees. You get the point? So some of the things that you're seeing as operate beyond 35% are historical. That there's pay that was already determined prior to SRC being put in the Constitution. You get the point? And that is the reason why government saw it fit to put a body in the Constitution whose sole mandate will be to set, review, and advise on the pay of a public servant. Secondly, the law does not allow an employer to reduce the pay of a worker. If the employer has to do that, it's a process. It's a process that is stipulated clearly in the law. You have to follow. But the law abhors an employer reducing the pay of an employee without following that procedure. So you will find that most of these things, for example, allowances, they are historical in nature. It will take quite some years before we now size up these allowances and say, let us minimize the allowances. You know, you do it gradually. You cannot say now, today I'm stopping. You can't stop because it is appearing in your contract. You cannot change the terms of a contract midstream until you have some serious discussion with the worker, and those discussions must be anchored in a law. You get the point? Yeah. So some of these things that are making us go beyond 35% are historical. It's pay that was set long before SRC came on board. So how will it fizzle out? People exit, through retirement, through other reasons. You exit with that contract, any other person coming is given a contract that is within what we are looking at. But not many people retire every day. just a small number retiring. 2, we have to be looking at issues like the numbers in our institutions, the numbers of employees in our institutions. If somebody retired today, do you replace or do you look at the duties this employee was doing and say, is there a way we can distribute this duty so that if we had 51 workers, if this one has gone, we can now remain with 50. If another one goes, can we again distribute this duty so that we keep reducing the number slowly by slowly? And that's why I told you, to get to 35%, we are giving ourselves to around 2028, around there, to see to what extent we can move to 35%. And that is what we would like to do. Or even if we don't move to 35%, we reduce the percentage today from the 40s, we start going into the 30s. And we are heading there. We are heading there because previously I think it was 46. Today, this financial year, we are at 43. So you see there is a gradual movement. And you have to do it knowing that behind all this, there are human beings. There are human beings who are called employees, very well protected by the laws of this land. Yeah.
And I want us to go back to the historic policies and regulations.
Yes.
Do you think these are the main factors and should they be updated?
They're just part of it. A policy in government is there to guide the operations of government in terms of its employees. You know, you don't just wake up and change a policy. There's a procedure that you must follow to be able to change a policy. And even before you change a policy, you need to ask yourself, to what extent is it going to negatively affect those that are directly controlled by that policy? So change of policy or change of regulations, it's a process that cannot be done overnight. It's a process that has to be thought through carefully so that you again don't create other legal hitches to let somebody go to court and say you are acting outside the law. So it's a process that will continue. And I've told you one of the things that is now happening in government, that it is not automatic that every retirement is met with a replacement. No, a one-on-one. No, we are looking at a way of you retire, but we can see what duties you're doing to see whether they can be spread out. Yeah, so that we can also now start working on the issue of numbers. Yeah.
Again, on the conference, what are the rationale for the conference?
Okay. The rationale for the conference is when government has money it has collected through taxes or through other means, but normally government collects its money through taxes, you will find that this is the amount of money it has in its basket. We only need 35% out of that money, so that the rest of the money is put on development. For example, we need good hospitals. You see doctors are making noise, they need a better salary. We need medicine in those hospitals. We need to employ doctors or medical officers in those hospitals. We need that money. But if you're not going to have enough money for now developing the infrastructure, so that Mwananchi can now say, this is what my government is doing for me, where are the roads? Where are those hospitals? Where are the schools? And are those institutions equipped, those government institutions, are they equipped with what is it called? It's just not a structure without doctors, without medicine. You need a laboratory. Today, cancer is very rampant, for example. Why should somebody travel all the way from Nyamira, come looking for a machine for cancer in Nairobi? It should be down in the county. You get the point? So those are some of the things that happen when now you spend more than 35% of your revenue as a country on pay of salaries. That is justification number one. Two, another rationale is that whatever remuneration and benefits that is paid out to the public servant should be something that the government can afford and sustain. It should not just afford today, it should be able to sustain it into the future. Because SRC, when it's setting, reviewing, and advising on pay, it does it for a period of 4 years. So that at the end of the 4 years, it should be thinking about another cycle. For example, the first cycle was 2013, 2017. then 2017, 2021, second, third was 2021, 2024. So you see, you're just finishing the third review cycle. We are supposed to be getting into the fourth review cycle. Before you do that, you ask yourself, does government have money? So that if you're reviewing a pay of an employee in government, there must be money to take care of that review. Because even if you're reviewing by 5 shillings, for example, multiply by the numbers, you realize a lot of money, and the government must have that budget. That is rationale number 2. So, government must grow. Government must grow, and it can only grow if it has the money. You've had many a times, for example, when people are faced with floods. Unakumbuka, you remember that story of Serikali's idea?
Yeah.
Serikali's idea was because here you have this area that is prone to floods. But what are we doing about it as government? We need to develop that area and to develop dikes and all those things and do dams that can now collect this water so that when rain comes, people are not crying out for government help. The services are on the ground. Without money, if you're going to spend more than 60% of your revenue on salaries, my friend, you cannot grow as a nation. And the same citizen will start blaming government and say, government is not giving us what we are required to have.
You've talked about what you want to achieve through the conference.
Yes.
But I would like you now to maybe elaborate a little about what are the main achievements of this conference? What do you look forward to achieving?
We'll achieve quite a lot of things. One of the biggest achievements is to come up with resolutions that are actionable, implementable. Resolutions that are not just going to gather dust on the shelves of government cupboards. No. There should be resolutions that picked, again, short-term, long-term, what is going to be done immediately, within which periods. So we must come up with the resolutions. 1, 2. This conference is attracting speakers from outside Kenya. We have speakers from South Africa. We also have speakers from, I think, Malaysia. We also want to see how do they do it in their own countries. What is it that Kenya is doing differently? What are they doing differently to achieve their ratios? Their ratios may not be 35%, but we know that Malaysia has done very well. And I'm told, I've heard a story that Malaysia was at the same place with Kenya, but they've really developed. How have they developed? What have they done differently? And this time around, if you look at the kind of president we have today, it's not a president that you just come up with a resolution and you put it there and you keep quiet. He'll keep calling, finding out where have you reached with this, what hiccups have you found, so that we don't just hold a conference, come up with the resolutions and keep them there and keep quiet. And there are people who are going to be tasked to make sure that this resolution is implemented and there's reportage about the success or the stage where you are in terms of implementing what has what resolution that has come. And the resolution will not just be falling under SRC alone. And as I told you, SRC will set advice and review, but somebody has to implement that advice. All those people I need, county governments I need, parastatals I need, independent commissions I need, public service, main public service I need, judiciaries I need, the parliament is in, because parliament now makes the law. Should there be a resolution on a particular law, it will be parliament to deal with it. Yeah.
Again, you're talking about getting to 35.
Yes.
And someone might ask, how far are we as Kenya to getting now to 35?
Average in the entire government about 60. Or how far are we? We are somewhere. We are somewhere because I told you I think the last financial year we were about 46%. Today we are about 43%. So we are moving somewhere. Things are not. And in fact, with the onset of SRC in the Constitution, things have really streamlined, my friend. And you know, something that, remember, these salaries were being set by different bodies before SRC came on board. And they've been there for many years. It's not going to take 2 years to complete the story. We have to move systematically so that we don't injure the public servant. You understand me? Like salaries that are higher, they stay there, depending on the kind of research that we have done. I know a listener hearing me say this will wonder, what about the life that has really become expensive? What about fuel is so high, taxes are all over the place and what have you? But government must collect taxes. Where will it get money from for us to do all these things we want to do? So it's going to take some time, but the journey has already started. It didn't start with this commission. It started with the first commission, where we are now saying that there is no board of an institution that will sit down and decide that employees are going to be paid like this and they're going to be given this pay. No. They now have to get that from the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. And Salaries and Remuneration Commission does not just advise. It has to liaise with the National Treasury. Do you have money? Do you have money for us to review this pay upwards? Because review means you can leave it like that or you can go up. Because of the law, you can't say review downwards. You will be injuring the employee. Yeah.
And maybe someone would like to know what are the thematic focuses of this conference.
Thank you. Having given the topic as towards the 35%, we are looking at the benefits of operating within 35% when it comes to remuneration and benefits in the public service. What are the benefits? And there are very many. One of them I've already said, and I'll repeat: you will have enough money for development, to develop the country, to construct those beautiful roads, even buy an electric train, for example. Tanzania down here now have an electric train, and I know we are heading there. I know the current president means very well. That's the first theme. The second theme is we want to take a view on productivity. Remember, I'll give you a very good example. Secretary, you're told in the morning by your boss, type this letter for me. So you type the letter, boss brings it back, it has mistakes, you correct. You take it back to the boss. Boss looks at it, makes another mistakes, they're there, correct. So you do that between 8 o'clock in the morning to 2 on how many letters?
1 letter.
Are you being productive? Those are the things that we are looking at in the public service. We are saying, how can we deliver quality service to the public using the least resources and using the least time? This secretary who is being told correct is a back and forth from 8 o'clock to 2 o'clock. How much toner have you used? How much paper have you used? How much time have you used? Time you could have used to do other things that go towards delivering quality service to Mwananchi. Are we together? So those are some of the things we are looking at, that how can we make the public service more productive? What is this work ethic that we can re-engineer, if it's there? Is it there? Is it active? Is it asleep? Do we need to wake it up? Do we need to retrain the public servant? Do we need to take a different approach when you want to employ somebody in the public service? Like, for example, you must have certain mandatory trainings from the Kenya School of Government to be taught about the work ethics required when you're a public servant. Do we need to do that? And I think there may be something around that area. We're also looking at the way forward. How do we mainstream productivity in the public service? I remember when you came up with this topic in one of the meetings we've had, a journalist asked me why we want to introduce productivity in public service, and yet public government doesn't make profit. It's true, government does not make profit, but it provides services. We still need to be productive in providing those services. For example, somebody issuing ID cards. How many ID cards do you issue in a day? How many do you issue within a specific period of time? How much resources have you used? How much time have you used? Those are some of the things we are looking at. There was the other issue the other day that people are waiting for their passports for a very long time. Is that being productive? If it's not, what is the issue in specific government offices that are making a government worker not be more productive? If a government worker is more productive, you will visit there for service, even to get it's called good conduct certificate, certificate of good conduct within a very short time. You don't have to wait for 2 weeks. Those are the things we are looking at. Use the least time and use the least resources to deliver quality services to the public. You realize that when COVID started and when COVID left, if it has left at all, because I'm told there's still some around here, people are no longer working the way they worked before COVID paid us a visit. True or false? True. Like today, I am here doing I was here before you came. I was doing work, but on Zoom. How did that come about? Before COVID, I had never heard of Zoom. So now you find we are doing most work on Zoom. That is the future of the workspace. The future of the workspace is changing. It has changed from 2020 when we had COVID. So we are heading towards the direction of, it is not the mandate of SRC, it will be the mandate of the entire government, the stakeholders in government, to come up with decisions. In fact, we were discussing this as one of the questions to be discussed during the conference. The workspace has changed. How do we motivate an employee to be more productive? You work, you deliver on what you're supposed to deliver, you go home. That government wants you to give it 6 hours. Give it 6 hours and use the rest of the hours to go and do your own things. It is coming, but it will not come today. But it's something that is being thought through. And even if it's being thought through, it will not be a thinking of SRC alone. Remember, we have to look at our mandate. What does our mandate do? But I know if that came up, and it's going to come up, SRC will be robbed in, because now you'll realize the allowances must change. We'll not just have the normal mainstream allowances. Something will have to change. We'll have to relook at the whole space of work that has changed, and retail allowances, for example, together with the Public Service Commission. Remember, Public Service Commission is the agent employer for government. A ministry comes up and says, we want to set up this office. Could you advertise and employ for us and interview for us so that we can get the officers to fill this position? You get the point? So it will have to be a government agenda to relook at the workspace. And it's a very good point, because I'm looking at a younger person today. A younger person who has just come from university is used to having side hustles. Can they be productive by sitting in the office the whole day? But it's a discussion that is going to come. It's not far away from the door. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was still asking a question on productivity.
Yes.
And I wanted to know, according to you, mm-hmm, how is Kenya faring in terms of productivity?
We have been given certain numbers. For example, ILO says that Kenya is, I think, number 151 out of 185. I think in the entire world. Are we doing well? 151 out of 185.
Yeah, at an average.
Well, something that's an average. And in Africa, out of 46, we are number 22. Up in the middle, somewhere in the middle. But we're asking ourselves, we can be better. We have defeated people in athletics and other things. We should carry our competitive spirit from other fields where we shine and bring it to our public offices and say, can we move from number 22 and even be number 2 or even number 1? Because we lead in so many things. Why can't we lead in productivity? And that is why we are having this conversation around the conference, that in terms of Malaysia, what is it that you're doing? What can you tell us? What can you give us? We will listen to them. South Africa, where are you? Where are you doing? What are you doing about your productivity? Can we learn something from South Africa? Can we learn? And not just learn and implement. Yeah.
And when someone hears you saying about coming from 47 to 35,
yes,
some say it's an easy task, but I know it's not easy.
It's not easy.
So what are the challenges that will outcome from this?
Many challenges. One of the staffing levels, the numbers in our public institutions. Public institutions have got numbers that we must relook at. There are maximums that have been set. Some institutions are operating at maximums, some are not. So one of the questions we're asking ourselves, if let's say you're supposed to employ 100 workers in a public institution and you have 40 and you're still operating, do you really need 100? Do we need to relook at those staffing levels as they were set long time ago and say, can we slash? Can we reduce? But this is not a story of one day. Remember, these numbers were put up a long time ago. So it will take some time, but not too long a time. Because I believe when government sets its mind on something, and I know the president we have today, if he sets his mind on reducing the numbers, not reducing the people in government, let no employee in government get worried, no. Say, before we said this institution should have 100 employees, we now take a decision and say, since it has been operating with 46,000, can we stick to 46,000? Can we move away from 100 and bring the maximum to be 50, for example? Those are some of the challenges that we'll be looking at. And I always feel that when faced with a challenge, that is the most opportune moment to come up with a solution. For example, if you went to your kitchen and you wanted to make tea, and you find that there's no sugar, there's no tea leaves, will you leave that kitchen without something to drink in the morning?
No.
You will think through your space. So government will think through its space and say, this is where we are. What can we do? And remember also that government cannot stop employing because the population has increased, meaning the requirement for providing more services is even bigger. You get the point? And it needs personnel to deliver on this. We just need to relook at the personnel. How can we retool the personnel? How can we rebrand the personnel? How can we remotivate the personnel? How can we refire the personnel to be able to deliver and deliver quality service where the consumer of this service, who is the mwananchi of this country, says, this country has tried, or this country is trying. That's where we are.
And will this conference be centered along the medium-term plan?
As I said, some of the resolutions may be centered around the medium-term plan. Some may be long-term. And that's why I'm telling you that every resolution will have a time stipulation, that this resolution should be reaching its completion or conclusion within this period of time, and we'll be considering that short term and long term. Yeah.
Yesterday, I listened to the president, and he was talking about the issue that is currently happening in Kenya on doctor strike.
Yes.
And he said that the main reason that the doctors are on strike is because Kenya is not financially stable, because we are trying to get to 35.
Yes.
What is your take on this?
The matter of the strike of doctors, because when you came in, I think you must have come across the matter or those steps, is a matter before a court of law. And I have been trained that when a matter is before a court of law, one should be very cautious with commenting about it. Assume that issue is the one before a court of law and we talk about it, we will be risking positions of parties before the court. But this is what I want to say. There must be things doctors are asking for. And the government is saying, you're asking for this, but we do not have money. But I think what is going to happen, and has already started happening, is that parties are sitting down to talk. And I'm sure through the talks, a solution is going to be found. I'm very positive about that. Yeah.
And as we close now, maybe you can give your parting shot to what Kenyans should expect ahead of this conference.
Thank you. One, Kenyans should expect a very well thought out conference. It's not a dull conference. If they're not able to access this conference, if they go to the website of SRC, they'll be able to follow discussions on the same and even post their questions that they think during the caucuses should be addressed. And the conference is about towards 35%. So the question should be tailored around the salaries being paid to public servants, the numbers of public servants that we have, and so forth. You know, employment matters around the public service. But I know the public has always had issues to do with paying public service. For example, I was asked a question about why we allow members of parliament to always add themselves a salary. They don't do that. What people see and they don't understand what it is. You know, when we're about to advise an institution, we normally do what we call public participation with the institution. So during that time is when members of parliament give their views. But sometimes those views are construed to mean that they are setting their own pay, or they are putting their pressure on SRC to set their own pay. Parliament knows the space of SRC. Parliament knows the value of SRC, and I don't think it is in their interest, or they are trying to bring down SRC on any issue. We talk, we agree. And you don't have to agree on anything. Some things we agree on, some things we don't. And that's normal. When put in the space where SRC is and when put in space where Parliament is, Parliament has to articulate issues and make the laws. SRC has to listen to those issues, put them in mind when it's determining pay in the public service. Yes, so I look forward for those who will be able to attend. I want to welcome them. For those who will not be able to attend, let them follow discussions on the website if they have access to internet, and give feedback. Give feedback, question, provide suggestions or what they think should be done. Because I know if I was we were to engage, let's say if this was a whole year thing and you were to engage the public, you get a lot of views that are quite interesting. And valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time, madam.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you.